fallout, smoke, women crying for their sons because their sons are not, Romans killing riotous groups that are rising up, free Judea, free our people, autonomy for Israel. You had Herod, an Edomite, and his dynasty. Herod's ruling, killing any potential threat, any potential Messiah. Then you had the Pharisees and the Sadducees, that we learn from Josephus are not Jews by birth. No. Now y'all look at that top left. You got the Pope kissing a rod with a black Jesus head on it, a Negro with woolly hair. What's up, BZ Dynasty? This is your boy, the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. YBZion, Yoruba and Ibrahim of the tribe of Joseph. Y'all, welcome back to Zion Dynasty. Welcome back to the channel. First, I want to say shalom to all my Israelite brothers and sisters. Shalom as well to my Gentile brothers and sisters. And welcome back to the channel, where I'm about to hit y'all with another banger. All praises be to the Most High Yah. Y'all, I'm excited about this one. This one is going to be a lot of teaching, you guys. This is going to be some good stuff. I know, just looking at the channel, a lot of you guys are subscribed and like, yo, JB, where is the Yoruba? We want more science. We want more scriptures and prophecies, the language, the customs of the West Africans, the Bantus, the Igbo. So I'm going to use this video to kind of do a lot of refresher on how do we know we're Israelites, the Negro question, how do we go from being in Africa or West Africa all the way to Israel, the Al-Andalus. I'm gonna do a lot of that, like a rehash, you guys, on a lot of that history. And it's all coming from this book, The Negro Question by Lee Cummings. Shout out to Kente for recommending that we do this book review. I'm gonna put this comment up. And if you guys have any other ideas, this is Black History Month, so we're gonna go all in. The Black Power series, you guys already know, we're gonna be talking about Dr. King, his ideology. You know, how it changed. We're going to talk about Malcolm X. Was he too extreme? We're going to talk about Stokely Carmichael, Fred Hampton, their socialist idea of reforming the black man, his autonomy, Marcus Garvey, back to Africa. Should we be trying to lead this country? There are some subscribers that ascribe to America being the promised land. So Israel, it's a lot of contention. There's a lot of different. So we're going to talk about all that in this month. But on today's video, the first half, I'm going to do a book review, a quick one on The Negro Question. When I tell you guys that book is awesome, you can get it from Amazon. Get the book, you guys. It's an easy read. I started, I should be saying this, but, well, in one work session, I was able to finish that book, you guys. So we're going to review that book, talk about that, talk about the history. We're going to go over some scriptures. We're going to go over the curses of Deuteronomy 28, right? We're going to go to all that we were scattered to the four corners of the earth, that we would be scattered to the land of the north country, where the Most High will regather us. This is going to be that video. Heavy prophecy. How do we know we're Israel? All of this with the foundation of the Negro question, right? So we're going to jump on into it. So first off, you guys, I want to give you guys a quick review on this book if you decide to get it. I recommend it. If you hear my daughters crying in the background, bear with me, Zion. Bear with me. So she hear her daddy's voice and she like, Daddy, where you at? So with the Negro question, he starts off masterfully, right? There are some areas of contention I have with the book, specifically when he gets into who are the Edomites, who are the Khazars, some of these, and these are obscure comments, you guys. These are obscure concepts, rather. When you look at defining us as Israel, that's not too hard. There's a lot of West African oral tradition and a lot of that stuff. But when you start getting into Esau and who is Edom, most Israel knows that Esau is the arch nemesis of Jacob. A lot of Hebrew Israelites ascribe to white people being descendants of Edomites. There's a lot of problems with that, mainly because if you look at Blake Griffin's son, he looks Caucasian almost. And I'm not bashing the brother, I'm just using that as an example. That you can't go on phenotype. So like when I say that all white people are Edom, where they might look white, but their great-great-grandfather was a black slave. So they're Israel. So it's not a color issue, it's a lineage, and that's where it gets kind of nitpicky, right? But even with saying that most Europeans that have European descent are Edomites. Now, we're going to go into the history of Esau and Edom. That's going to be our next series after we conclude the Black Power, because you got to know yourself and you got to know the system that we're up against, you guys. And there's a lot of history when you get into Eliphaz, the grandson of Esau, how he moved to Europe and became a mighty general among the ancient Chittim people. But then you also had Amalek during the time of Canaan that are said to be descendants of Esau. So these are two different groups. You have European Esau family, at least, because we know Eliphaz went there via the book of Jasher. And then you have Amalek, who are the Amalekites that the Most High says you will war against in every generation, which is prophetic about our people going against this Edomite system. I say system rather than people because we don't really know. You can't really label all white people as Esau. But there is a vast majority that do have links to that via the Europe that Eliphaz went through. But you have some Canaanites that also have heavy European, heavy Edomite influence. So that's my only contention with the book, you guys. It's toward that end, but we're going to talk about it. So first off, he starts off by talking about, okay, who are black people? Who are we? What is our identity? So he starts off by showing the heavy black influence in the scripture. We've talked a lot about this, you guys. How they were mistaken as Egyptians. Our people were a dark-skinned people. Now let's go back a little bit, shall we? So in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, the first rivers that we hear mentioned are the river Tigris, Euphrates, Hindekel, right? And when you look at these rivers, the scriptures even tell you these are the rivers that surround the land of Cush, or Ethiopia. So the Garden of Eden would have been either Northeast Africa, the land of Israel, but there is some Israelites that argue it probably was in the heart of Ethiopia. Science backs that it was Ethiopia. When you look at the original man, when you look at haplotypes L0 and a lot of these are said scientifically to originated in Africa. So the Adamic man, now that's a whole nother concept because we got the pre-Adamic man, but we're talking about most modern people come, I say most, because you're going to get into Esau and him mixing with some strange entities, but that's a whole nother video. So most modern people descend from Adam, who would have been in Africa, Ethiopia, or maybe Northeast Africa, which is the Middle East. Middle East of what? They call that's a political term. It's really Northeast Africa or even Western Asia. That's more accurate. So he talks about how the rivers are in Africa and the ancient Shemitic people look just like Ham. And we know this because Abraham went to Egypt during the time of famine. Isaac did. Jacob did. Joseph was sold by his brothers at 17, but couldn't be recognized by them when he would have been around 30 when he became vizier of Egypt. So you gotta use a little common sense. He wouldn't have changed that dramatically. But the ancient Shemitic Israelites were able to blend in. So they're dark people. The area of creation would have been Africa. So that's when he talks about the Zondervan. Now I'm gonna pick that up on the screen, you guys. But in the Zondervan Bible Compact Dictionary, it says that Ham is the father of the dark races, not the Negroes, right? So if Ham is the father of the dark races, y'all excuse the kids. If Ham is the father of the dark races, not the Negroes, who are Negroes? That's us, right? So that begs the Negro question. Who are we? We know that ancient Shem was mistaken as Ham. Shem is the father of the Israelites. So this will make you think, okay, Shem was black. We're black. They say we're not Ham. Japheth would have been the modern European countries. When you get into Greece, when you get into Rome, when you get into Italy. Well, that's the capital of Rome. When you get into all those European island countries, Great Britain, France, and that kind of thing. That would have been the Japheth borders. Genesis chapter 10 said these are the borders of the Gentiles. So I love the way he goes ahead and lets us know that the Bible is an African book. Africa is mentioned more than any other continent by 1,000 times. I'm talking about close to 200 times Africa, and that's not even including Egypt references. And Greece is not really mentioned, but maybe on 10 times tops, right? Now, if you include the hidden books, Maccabees, it goes into the Greek history a little bit more heavier, but we're talking about our KJV. And even then, we know that's Alexander the Great when we talk about the Greeks. That's not Israel. So when you hear Israel's history talked about, Africa is everywhere. So I love the way he talked about that. He also showed you guys, I'm gonna put on the screen, a lot of the images of these African and Shemitic people. Now let's check this out, you guys. When you look at King Shulga, who looks Asian, right? A lot of these original Asiatic people were Afro-Asiatic. They were black people. That's why Negroes are also said to be Afro-Asiatic people. When you look at Sargon, who would have been Shemitic. When you look at King Gadea, when you look at modern Iraq, you see that there are remnants of these people that have these dark and Negro phenotypes, right? He even shows the ancient Egyptians, Nefertiti and King Tut, the boy king, right? That these folks were Negroid. So when Shem Israelites, they couldn't have been Caucasian, you guys, because they were mistaken for these Egyptians, which history and archaeology tells us they were a dark-skinned people, right? So I love that he shows those images. He goes into Egypt meaning black, you guys. Now that I was kind of like, well, Egypt really means the house of bondage. Mitzrayim is the archaic name, or you might even hear Khemit. But Mitzrayim was the son of Ham, right? So I was like, well, I ain't gonna get too caught up, because I cross-referenced it. And I was like, I did see some mentionings that Egypt means black. I see where he got it from, but I don't necessarily subscribe to that. So next he goes through the different African territories that are represented in the scriptures, right? He goes into Acts chapter 2, where Peter says that there were devout Jews that came out of Cyrene and Libya. And this is where we have to know these regions, you guys. Cyrene is Africa. I might put a map up. Libya is Africa. And at one point, the whole continent of Africa was called Libya. Through different points of history, you see Africa called different names. You hear Africa called Ethiopia from the beginning. But shortly after that, you hear it called the Kingdom of Morocco or Morocco. You might even hear Maghreb. You might hear Libya, right? These were different names, and it's mainly the northern region, right? Because the southern region, or sub-Saharan region, was not populated in antiquity. That's why you don't hear about Nigeria and West Africa and Cameroon, because these were Israelite exiles that populated, became the Bantu people, and I might do a whole video on that, you guys. That's a whole nother topic. So he talks about how a lot of these African areas were known to have Jews in it. When you talk about Carthage, Cyrene, Alexandria of Egypt, Elephantine, Memphis, right? Cyrene, Acts chapter 2, Alexandria about 332 BC, and that kind of thing. So you see, this is where the church has not done a good job, the Western church. There's so much African references that even if you don't want to say we're Israel, how come we didn't know about the rest of this stuff? Because if you fool with the rest of the history of these Jews that were in these African regions, you'll start thinking that maybe there's more African influence than what we've been told. Because a lot of these African regions house diaspora Jews, right? Scattered Jews, right? We see that on the day of Pentecost. You see these devout Jews coming out of these chiefly African and Asian regions, right? They were Afro-Asiatic people in antiquity. And this is New Testament. Then you see Paul mistaken as an Egyptian in Acts chapter 21, right? You see, even if we go back, let's go back. Job 30:30, Job says, my skin is black upon me. Song of Solomon 1:5, Solomon, the son of David, says, I am black but beautiful. In Judges, I know I'm skipping around, Judges 16:13, the 7 locks were cut off Samson's hair. Right? Now, I love one of those new Jesus documentary Netflix things. When they did the Samson story, they had the big burly black guy playing Samson. Because a lot of folks can't argue that. And so then they say, well, the tribe of Dan was different than the rest of them. But all of these come from the same 4 women, right? But then you start talking about Judah. Judah's first wife was a Canaanite. So Canaanites are descendants of Ham, which are black. Judah would have been a dark-skinned Shemite. So his kids would have been dark. Then his brother is Levi. He would have been dark. This is Moses, because Moses was raised in Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh was killing Hebrews, y'all. He was actively trying to destroy Hebrews. But how was Moses able to be raised in Pharaoh's house if Pharaoh's trying to kill all the Hebrew babies? He blended in. So when his daughter went and found Moses, he just thought this was his daughter's son, right? Until he became of age and he started trying to liberate the people and said, let my people go, and we know the story. So it's so many different instances in the Bible, y'all, where we see dark-skinned Hebrews. Samson with the locks, Joseph being in Egypt, Moses being raised in Egypt, Abraham going into Egypt, Christ fled into Egypt, you guys, to hide from Herod. In Matthew chapter 2, when Herod was trying to kill all the Hebrew babies, where did he go? Into Africa. We think Egypt, but you got to just translate it with Africa, because Egypt is in Africa. So when we start thinking like that, that's why it's a business, you guys, that's trying to keep this information out. I hate to say it, because I don't think our European brothers are that simple where they don't know this. That would be assuming the most absurd level of naivety, all right? So what else? Let's get back into this book. So he begins talking about a lot of West African tribes, right? He goes into the borders in Joshua chapter 15, the cities that were given to each tribe. And this is where we run into the Ashan people. Now the Ashanti tribe is now a part of, I believe, the bigger Ghana people, the Ga-Dangbe, the Ga people. But in antiquity, they had their own distinct, I think they're a part of Ghana now, but the Ashanti tribe was its own unique entity. And in Joshua, we see that Ashan was one of the territories that was given to Judah. And we also see, let me get that scripture up, that in Joshua chapter 19, verse 7, that Ashan city given to Judah was given to Simeon. Because if you guys know the history of Israel, Simeon's portion of the promised land was within Judah. So some people say they're Judah and they could be Simeon. That's where the Simeon comes in, that kind of thing. You also got Reuben and a bunch of other that were mingled throughout the borders. So we see Ashan was a Judean city that was also given to Simeon when Simeon was given some of Judah's territory. And this is where we get the Ashanti. Now I'm going to pick this picture up, you guys. Now check this out. We see the Ashanti priest with an ephod around his neck. And on that ephod, we see the 12 stones that the high priest would wear, which symbolized each one of the 12 tribes of Israel. All praises to the Most High Yah. So not just that, you guys. He goes into the Igbo. Now, a lot of Igbo have Portuguese, Sephardic ancestry from when the Jews were banished from Spain. This is what I didn't know, you guys. Spain sits right on Africa. Or it connects at the Gibraltar Strait right to Morocco. So it makes sense when they were expelled, the first place they would go was Africa, because the Moors still had a stronghold. They could blend in with the people and they could easily escape persecution, which is why Henry Gratz, the Jewish scholar, says it's estimated over 400 to 800,000 Sephardic Israelites fled into Africa. And that's just what they're willing to say. Now, what they're going to tell you is in a certain operation, I can't remember which patriarch is named after, that they airlifted a lot of these Moroccan Jews, like 350,000, over to the land of Israel. And I'm like, so ain't none of them migrate interior to become Lam or all these other places? They doing some shysty stuff with that. Just like they say that the Beta Israel, all of them in the land of Israel right now. When they had to have 3 separate airlifts. Now we're gonna deal with that. Okay. So the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, there was an Operation Moses in 1984. There was an Operation Sheba in 1985. And there was an Operation Solomon in 1991, where they airlifted these Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews into the land. Now this is corroborated with Amos 9:7. Are you not as the Ethiopians unto me? And I believe the historian Tacitus says that the Jews were of Ethiopian origin, African origin, and they look just like them. Just like I believe in Jeremiah 13:23 it says, can the Ethiopian change its spots? Your Most High saw our people as Ethiopian African people. We look just like them. And we sojourned in Africa through various periods in history, you guys. So he goes over the Igbo and then he comes back around and talks about the Igbo in terms of Eri. Now, a lot of modern Igbo that know that they are Israel say that they descend from Eri, who I believe is the 8th son of Gad, right? Now, I believe this links with the Yoruba Oduduwa oral tradition. This is a whole nother video, you guys. Because Oduduwa was said to be of B'nai Ephraim origin, right? Now, not the B'nai Ephraim that came recently, but the founding of the Yoruba people was back circa 722 BC when the Assyrian Empire fell, and you had Oduduwa, who would have been a descendant of Yoruba, or King Jeroboam of Ephraim. Now, was he of the tribe of Ephraim? I believe that he was of the royal house, but the Igbo could claim to be Ephraim as well. Why do I say that? Because the entire northern kingdom was known as Israel. But sometimes you see them called Joseph, or you see them called Ephraim. Because the royal house of Ephraim was the leading tribe of all 10 lost tribes. So that's why you see that Jewish prime minister, I forget his name, going into Nigeria to search for the 10 lost tribes. Because they were led by the tribe of Joseph into Africa around 722 BC. That's a whole nother video. Man, it's a lot of topics. So let me try to talk more about these things, y'all. So he talks about Gad, Eri. He talks about the Limbo tribe. The Limbo tribe, having said that they descend from the priest, that they migrated when the temple fell in 70 AD, which is why most African Americans, or if you do a JED match or test your ancestry in comparison to modern populations, you're gonna look like the Limbo. That's gonna be your closest group because they recently came out of the land of Israel, and the route that they went through Ethiopia, is more recent than, say, the Nigerians that had been there since, I don't know, like 8th century BC or some stuff like that. So it's a lot of history. He goes over all these different tribes, y'all, and he doesn't even mention the Yoruba, because there's so many other West African groups. I mean, you got the Beta Israel, you got the Limbo tribe that go back to the Levites that had the coimmodal haplotype. You got the Igbos that are Sephardic, as well as descended from Eri's son. So he talks a lot about that, you guys. So, and he also talks about the Papal Bulls. Now, you guys got to understand, they say our history began in 1492, right? They are 1619. But you got to ask yourself, so in 1692, they knew to go to Africa to take some slaves and bring them to America. Now, how they knew they was going to be able to do that? You ever ask these kind of questions? This is where the Spanish history comes in. Because in 1492, they kicked every black Jew out of Spain. They said, y'all corrupting all of our Christianized Jews by trying to get them to turn back to Torah. Doesn't that sound familiar? So we had this going on even in Spain. They got tired of us trying to proselytize other black Hebrews that were Christians. So those European Edomite people, and I call them Edomite because the Sephardic Jews looked at Christian Spain as Edom. Now, whether they descend from Esau, that's a whole nother thing. But our people said, man, they Edom. They trying to take our history. And we even had beef against the Muslims, really, because they all tried to gang up on Israel, even though they all come from Israel, right? The Islamic people trace their lineage to Ishmael, but they have respect for the people of the book. Then you got the Christians that y'all wouldn't even have no religion without the Jews, the Israelite people, my forefathers. But they ganged up on our forefathers and kicked them out of Spain in 1492. Like I said, 400 to 800,000 went into Africa through Morocco, and this is the oral tradition of the Yoruba, right? Also, Igbo claim that they are Portuguese. When I say Portuguese, a lot of our people, when they were banished, went to Portugal. And they were able to be there for a little while until they got kicked out of there and sent to Sao Tome and the Canary Islands and that kind of thing. Sao Tome is right off the west coast of Africa where Nigeria is. So it's a lot of history, you guys, that proves we're the people. But a lot of our people reject it, and they don't give you time to go through this history. It's a lot that has taken place. You got to cover the 400 years of us being in America. Then you have to cover the West African tribes that we come from and how their oral tradition. The oral tradition of our people is money, you guys. I'm telling you, our people knew who they were. I'm gonna do a whole nother video on Muhammad Bello and his claim. And that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, it's a lot, you guys. So he talks about the rebellions to get our people to think black slaves was not just going along with this. They get us to think that stuff don't matter and just sit back. But you got Nat Turner, you got Denmark Vesey, you got Harriet Tubman, who was called Black Moses. Y'all check out that Harriet Tubman video because her people knew who she was. Araminta Rose was her original name, which is a Hebrew name, of the tribe of Ashanti, who is Judah, right? So there is Judah in Africa. There's Gad, there's Naphtali, there's Zebulun. All of this is just from the Igbo. Manasseh, Igbo. Then you got the Yoruba, who are Ephraim, and you got some Levi in there as well. You got the Limbo, who are Levi, Ashanti, which are Judah. You got, it's just a bunch of different tribes in there, you guys. You had a whole kingdom of Judah on West Africa. So he talks about those rebellions, you guys. Now let me put these scriptures up on the screen. So I talked about those Papal Bulls. Those Papal Bulls is where Christopher Columbus collaborated with Queen Isabella, because you had to go through Seville. You had to go through Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand to get the license to get the slaves. Now, how did they have a monopoly on slave trade? You gotta ask yourself. This is that Spanish history of our people, because they just kicked out black Jews. So you had to go to them to be able to get a license to be able to get these slaves. So they was inviting all these Europeans to come into Africa and get these Moorish Israelites, right? So you had to go through Seville in Spain to be able to get a license to trade these newly found Negro, Yaya Negro, black Moorish Israelites. That's how they knew in 1607 that there was slaves over there, because they were refugee Israelites. This is, well, I might have to do a whole other video on that. And they took them and they took them to the Americas. So he goes over those Papal Bulls. He shows these early images of Christ, you guys, that go predate the Roman Catholic Church. Now check these pictures out, y'all. Look how black Yeshua is. Now I have a whole Russian icons book that shows more of these pictures, you guys. Now look at these. Madonna and Child. Now look how black they were. See, they say that we racist because we want them to bring this information out. And the dark thing, you guys, is in the basement of the Vatican, they still got black images of Yeshua and the prophets. It's some dark stuff. And they also got some more creepy stuff, y'all. Y'all check this out. Now y'all look at that top left. You got the Pope kissing a rod with a black Jesus head on it, a Negro with woolly hair. White folks some weird people. I'm telling you, that's some weird stuff. There's some dark stuff like Get Out and Us. And y'all, I seen a video, I might link it in here, where you had
applauso, accogliamo il bambinello. Sessione ordinata, ci recheremo al pontile della guardia costiera. Svaglio secolare. Corrado, per piacere.
a bunch of Catholics with a black baby doll, and they was kissing it and passing it through. Ain't no black person in sight. It's some dark stuff. They know our history, and it's like they want to be us, some dark stuff. So y'all check out those pictures. It's some weird with the business kind of stuff. Now look at these crests. Now this is where you get into Schwarzenegger, and a lot of these European last names, surnames. When our people, the Moors, our Israelites, ruled Europe, because we ruled the earth for about 800 to 1,000 years. Sounds like the day of the Most High. History gonna repeat itself. So our people ruled Spain at one point before we got kicked out of there, when the Christians ganged up against the Israelites. Because we had a monopoly on money with the Barbanels and a lot of stuff. But before we got kicked out, and before the Christians kind of came to power, we were ruling the world for like 800 years, from 711 AD to about 1492. And we had family crests, which were Negro. Check these crests out. Now the Pope got this crest that we have on the right behind him. And you see that Negro with the big lips, with the swarthy skin, with the crown on his head. Now look at that, y'all. That stuff is powerful. And we even got other crests that you see these black images. Look at these things, man. That stuff is iconic. Look at these crests. That stuff is legendary, you guys. How our people ruled during that time. So a lot of European history, when you look at the Saxons, descendants of Isaac, a lot of that stuff is our history, you guys, that white folks have appropriated, Europeans have appropriated, right? So as you see, this brother did an immaculate job, right? So then after he shows these different crests and these different ancient pictures of Jesus and the prophets, he goes into the curses. Now this is where Deuteronomy 28, he says Deuteronomy 28 says, these curses shall be upon you and your seed as a sign forever. And the mystery is, the Bible says, cursed is any man that hangs on a tree. Our people were lynched like 90 going west, you guys. Some years it was up to 80 lynchings in a year. Understand. So the nations knew we were cursed. And it was allowed to happen because the Most High had put a curse on his people. That until we turn back to our heritage, a lot of us think of that as, oh, we got to turn back to keeping laws and checklists. It's your culture. You're thinking of it in a European mindset. Our heritage was meant to be our life, the way we just lived, the way we taught our kids, and it was second nature for them after we taught it for such a long time. Just live your culture and know who you are. Because if you don't, the nations are going to take your heritage, right? And that's what happened. That's the curses. So I love the way he went into that. He talks about the judgment that's going to come on the Lord, from the Lord, and how us returning back to the land is a part of end time prophecy. A lot of my Christian brothers be like, well, why does this matter? What does knowing that you're Israel have to do with salvation? Well, the biggest reason it has to do with salvation is because Israel is a sign, right? Israel is to cap off the age of the Gentiles. Our people were broken off so that a few remnant, humble, believing Gentiles could come into the fold. But our people are going to be restored is the part they don't tell you. There is no replacement theology. The Most High is going to take his people by the hand back into that land, and it's going to far exceed the first Exodus in the way that he does it. There are going to be nations, Gog and Magog. A lot of people think it's going to be Russian influence and Chinese influence. Y'all got to watch the news, what's going on right now. But that they're going to war against the Most High, leading his people through Yeshua coming back and taking us back to that land. This is prophecy, you guys. Now, some people take the 144 literally. I don't think that that's meant to be literal. The number 12 speaks of the government. So when you deal with the 12 tribes and 12,000, this speaks to the day of the Lord, the tribes of Israel. But even if you take it literally, the book of Revelation makes it clear. The Most High has a number, the saints from each tribe, that he's going to take and use as the ruling class in the land of Israel, in the land of our forefathers, to govern this earth with a rod of iron. Anybody that don't submit to God's people gonna be put to death. I know that sounds rough, but anybody that don't listen to Yeshua gonna be put to death. So think of it like that. And he gonna use his people to execute vengeance, right? So this is when you get into eschatology and end time prophecy and that kind of thing. That's why Israel does matter. And the nations that have oppressed them will be judged. So I love the brother's book, you guys. Y'all gotta check that thing out. I might split this video up to kind of show you guys some of the word Negro, where does it come from, and show you some of that science. But with that, y'all, peace, love, blessings, and black power to the chosen race of the Most High Yah. I love you guys with the love of the Most High. Peace and blessings to Israel. And I just love you guys. I can't say it enough. And thank you guys for all the support. And with that, shalom. All praises.